And now Gukesh goes pawn to e5. He plays solidly, but in e4, e5 there are always layers. Sometimes you can play like super solid lines, sometimes you can play sharp lines, making white kind of stretch there. Bishop c4, the Italian is on the board with the bishop coming out there, and Gukesh brings his bishop to c5. Abhimanyu now plays pawn to d3, and knight comes out to f6, keeping pressure on the central squares. Bishop to g5 by Abhimanyu. He's going in for the kill here. Bishop g5 is always very sharp, because after h6 you have to kind of go to h4. I mean, bishop e3 is also possible, but bishop h4 the more ambitious. And now your bishop is a little bit misplaced, but at the same time is putting pressure here. So if black wants to get rid of it, has to play g5, which creates this double-edged situation in the game. Castles has been done. d6 by Gukesh. Notice how he keeps his king in the center here, doesn't castle very soon. And now Abhimanyu goes c3, a useful move to maybe make square for his bishop, but also prepare the central pawn push with d4. And a knight comes to d2, defending the pawn in the center, preparing rook e1, and g5. Let's go. Gukesh goes here. Knight takes g5 doesn't really work in such positions, so bishop g3 is kind of forced. And now knight h7 played by Gukesh. There were other moves here. Queen e7 was played by Vishy, knight d7 by Prag. Knight h7 is a lesser played move, but it has been played before, and it's something that Abhimanyu is caught a little bit off guard and thinks for 19 minutes before playing the most natural move, d4, pushing in the center. h5 by Gukesh, trying to trap the bishop on h4. You can play h4 now as white and get a normal position here, but he takes the pawn. He takes on e5, and now Gukesh must go h4, trapping this bishop when the game can get extremely sharp by takes, queen h5, queen e7, and this all complications. But look at what Gukesh does, and look at Abhimanyu's expression. He's shocked, he's stunned. He's like, Gukesh, why have you played g4 here? This looks completely bad. I can go knight h4, I can go bishop h4, I can do several things. And both players take out their bottle of water. For Gukesh, this move means that he's lost out of the opening. Instead of h4, which was sharp, the thing can be that he couldn't make h4 work and he went here with g4. Now the best move for Abhimanyu is to take the pawn on d6. And he does it. He finds the best move. And that's what we were talking about. Calculating monsters here. Gukesh and Abhimanyu. Pawn takes knight. The knight is lost. But look at the number of pawns you have won. Another pawn bites the dust on c7. D takes c7. Now the queen is attacked. So there's no time for fg2. And the bishop protects the pawn. So you have to move the queen away. Queen e7 looks like a normal move. And now simply chop off another pawn on f3. Look at Abhimanyu there. Kind of putting water on his face and so on. Freshening himself up for the next battle. 4 pawns for a piece is what Abhimanyu has. That's a lot of material if you think about it. And he's totally winning. He goes h3 now, asking a question to the bishop here on g4. Gukesh doesn't want to take here because after takes, the rooks simply come in the center. White is just totally dominating. He goes bishop e6. And now bishop takes e6. You know, one of the things that Abhimanyu has to do now is to switch from playing for an attack to perhaps playing more positionally, because his position is winning here. But it's not so simple. Now queen d7, maybe some ideas of sacrificing here. I don't know. The king is still in the center. You can't long castle. There's this huge pawn sitting in the middle. Bishop takes e6 taken. Taking with the pawn is possible. Taking with the queen also is possible here. He takes, queen takes e6. I like this move because now the queen is well positioned here. Okay, the best way to continue is just push the pawn in the center. Exactly, that's what he does. A good move, kind of creating this nice chain right in the center of the board. And Gukesh is utterly lost. He's in big trouble. Whoa! King d7 right into the heart of the position. Gukesh wants to go rook g8 and tuck his king into the corner and then say, I'm going to attack at you, Abhimanyu. In spite of having a bad position, he is going all out, and Abhimanyu makes a mistake. He goes knight d4. The best moves here were b4, a4, trying to sort of attack on the queen side. But knight d4 is so natural, playing in the center. But now Gukesh has a chance to come back from being completely lost here. He can make a comeback here by taking bishop takes d4. It's an important move. He settles down himself, takes his time, and with 7 minutes of thought, he chops off. Abhimanyu takes back as well. Now threatening the move d5, a very important move to stop. So queen d5 played here by Gukesh, and now rook g8 and king c8 is on the cards. So queen takes h5 taken here by Abhi. And now knight to f6 played by Gukesh, the best move, attacking the queen. You have to be giving this check, otherwise it's like rook g8 coming in, mating attack here. The position is shifting suddenly. Gukesh coming back is the momentum going in Gukesh's favor. He comes back queen e6, and now notice how this pawn on e5 is doing a dual role. It's defending the bishop and also attacking the knight. So you can't take it because your bishop hangs. Queen takes queen, and now pawn takes seems like the right move. He takes with the f pawn. White has these 3 pawns now, and also the pawn on c7. Actually, if you count the number of pawns, white has 5 pawns for a piece. Oh my goodness, has 5 pawns for a piece here. Black has just 3. But on the other hand, now the black knights have safe squares in the center. Knight c6 attacks d4. Knight d5 is well placed. So Abhimanyu has to tread very carefully. He might very soon start losing pawns. f5 played. He's trying to get his pawns rolling, get activity before the black knights become complete monsters on the board. Pawn takes pawn, rook takes on f5, looks normal. He chops it off. Now Gukesh can take the pawn on d4. He can get back one of his pawns. He does it. Knight takes d4, attacking the rook here. And now Gukesh is 4 pawns for a piece. He goes for a check. King e6 has to be played. We are on move 28 with 10 minutes for Abhimanyu, 13 minutes for Gukesh. Brings the other rook in. Maybe some ideas of check here, these are possible. But the knight does an incredible job. He brings rook g8, trying to attack here. Pawn to g4. Abhimanyu starting to push his pawns. Knight to b5. Now threatening to take the bishop on d6. Getting back another pawn. Rook h7 played. And I believe takes should be a pretty decent way to approach here. But Gukesh, super ambitious, goes rook g6. It's a mistake. He wants to take here and not be bothered with this check that comes in on f6. But now Abhimanyu goes in rook f7. A better move was rook d1 or rook c1. But he goes rook f7, giving Gukesh another chance to chop the bishop and go for this drawish line. But will Gukesh go for it? Once Gukesh is ambitious, he doesn't stop. He wants to beat his opponent. He goes rook c8, rook d7. Now Abhimanyu is like, I'm also ambitious. If you take here, I'll take back and I've saved my pawn. Rook h6. What a move by Gukesh. Rook g7. If you had taken the rook, your rook was hanging. So rook g7 played. And now he chops off the pawn on h3. Move number 34. Both players down to their last few seconds with 6 moves to make. a4 attacking the knight. Oh, he should have taken here on d6. He goes knight d4. Bishop c5 by Abhimanyu. The only good move now for Gukesh. Rook d3 has to be played somewhere. No, he goes knight e2. Check. A mistake. A big mistake here. The reason for that will become apparent in a second. Now king f1 or king f2. Both are winning here. Abhimanyu takes his time, thinks about this, and goes king f1. Beautiful move. And now the knight has to move knight f4. And the winning move here is bishop d4 on move number 38. Can Abhimanyu find it with 50 seconds on the clock? The reason why it's winning is very clear. Rook d6 is a checkmate, nothing less. Rook f3 check by Gukesh with just 5 seconds. King e1. 39th move. They're going to get 50 minutes after move 40. Knight d3 check. King comes up to d2. And Abhimanyu has made it to move 40. He's just checking on the score sheet if he has done that. Yes, he has. Gukesh needs to do something about this checkmate. He takes the pawn. But this is lost now. Why? Because after bishop takes e5. Look at this. Both players now have 47, 46 minutes. And this is something that Abhimanyu is going to simply outcalculate his opponent. He takes on e5. Bishop takes on e5. If king e5, rook g5 check, picking up the knight. And when the dust is settled, white is 2 pawns up. Gukesh now completely lost. The over-ambition to win there came back to haunt him here in this game. But it's also one of the things that has helped him win many games. That's the nature of that. For now, he's lost king e6. And Abhimanyu can take here. Rook g takes d5. Keeping the c7 pawn guarded. Yes, takes on d5 now. You can grab one more pawn, takes king d5, but then after rook b7, you are completely winning in this position with 2 extra pawns. So rook b3 played by Gukesh, who is trying to give a tough resistance now. And Abhimanyu comes check. The question is if Abhimanyu can hold on to his nerves here, playing against the world champion. He might well be the youngest ever player in the history of chess to beat the classical world champion in a classical game. Check here on e7. Goes king e6. And Gukesh showing some confidence there as he moves up. But Abhimanyu knows all that he has to do is just find a good setup for himself. There are some problems that he's facing. He's losing this pawn on b2. Firstly, should he save it with king c2? Well, he decides to go rook d3. Very interesting choice by Abhimanyu. He's giving up a pawn on b2. Gukesh chops it off. Rook takes on b2. And now king c1. So one of the big problems that Gukesh has is rook c3 and rook d8. That would just end the game. So g pawn starts to run now because the rook has to go back, which is why Gukesh played his rook here. g5, king to f5, attacking the pawn on g5, and rook d5 check. So with this check, king has to move back, and now Abhimanyu simply gives another check on d6, king e5. You have to be careful about rook takes, and king takes d6. So he comes back rook d2. A very smart move. If you trade rooks, you are completely lost. This pawn is moving ahead. So rook h1 check by Gukesh, and king comes to b2. He goes after the g pawn. And rook to g7. So the rook defends here and here. And now threatening rook d8. So rook has to go back to h7. I mean, it's amazing how Abhimanyu has step by step just completely dismantled this endgame without really doing much. Like, amazing. King e5. And now he can just push his pawn to g6. Yeah, pawn to g6. Pushing forward. The game is over. Rook h4. He goes rook f7, and the idea is g7 now. Gukesh pushes the pawn to b5. He takes AB. AB. And now the problem for Gukesh, of course, is that g7 and rook f8 and making a queen here. So he goes rook to b4 check, king c3, and look at Abhimanyu there. He is in his element. He's going to win this game. He's going to beat the world champion here. Another check to the king, going after the c7 pawn, but after king b3, you take c7 twice and you let the g pawn queen, so it's not really hanging. 60 moves have been completed. 15 more minutes will be added to the clock. Abhimanyu plays his king to b3 and it's all over, guys. Gukesh is going to resign here. He has nothing more to play. There you see resignation. What a game by Abhimanyu Mishra. He's showing why he is one of the best talents in the world of chess, and he's beaten the classical world champion Dommaraju Gukesh in exciting style.